Good morning. Welcome to the forecast discussion for March 13th, 2013. Of course, it's a Wednesday. We're almost to the weekend. And it's currently 8:11 a.m. We have temperatures in the lower to mid 30s over the northern interior and mid to upper 30s along the coast with a weak westerly wind anywhere from 5 to 10 miles per hour and scattered to variable cloud cover. Right now, we're kind of in between two cold fronts. One cold front that brought all the rain yesterday, and another weaker cold front that is bringing colder air to the Philadelphia and New York City metropolitan area by tomorrow. For today, though, scattered cloud cover for the most part, and temperatures rebounding into the upper 40s to lower 50s over the northern interior and lower to mid 50s along the coast, making for a very pleasant afternoon for sure. Now, taking a look at the latest radar from the Penn State E-Wall right here. You can see we have a few scattered snow showers here around the Great Lakes and Ohio River Valley with that disturbance. I think a lot of this moisture is going to be wrung out over the Appalachian Mountains right here. So while there is an isolated threat for a shower today, I think most of this collapses over the Ohio River Valley and we end up with generally scattered to variable cloud cover this afternoon as this cold front moves through in the late afternoon and early evening hours. And we can see that very nicely on the infrared satellite picture, this disturbance rotating through with the cold front right here. The cold front will move through in the evening. Temperatures will fall through the upper 20s and lower 30s by tomorrow morning. And you end up with a much chillier forecast on the way for tomorrow with high temperatures struggling in the mid to upper 40s. Not exactly the most pleasant afternoon high temperature regime, but at the same time, this is March, and you typically see in March a lot of type roller coaster type temperature patterns where one day you're in the 50s, almost 60 degrees, sometimes almost touching 70 in some cases, and then the next day you're in the 40s or the 30s. That's just the way March works out because we're kind of in that transition month. So taking a look at the water vapor satellite picture, you can see we have a lot of interesting disturbances rotating throughout North America. Start out here in the Atlantic. Here's our old storm still spinning away over the central Atlantic. And that's pretty much blocking up the rest of the pattern here. Okay? Especially over North America, where because of this block here, you start setting up an upper level low basically right around Quebec, and that is going to have an influence on our weather pattern throughout at least into early next week, with forcing the storm track a little bit further south than what you would expect with the trough in the west. Meanwhile, out in the Pacific, we have a very strong storm and very deep trough over the eastern Pacific, producing all sorts of storms from the Gulf of Alaska down through the Pacific Northwest. You can see a very strong jet stream driving right into the west coast. Now, if it wasn't for this block in the Atlantic, what you'd end up with is a nice deep trough in the west and a nice ridge in the east. But because you have all this blocking setting up in the Atlantic and all these disturbances rotating around, you end up with a bit of a battle between what's called a negative NAO pattern and the ridge that's trying to develop over the southeast very slowly, and it's being blunted because of what's happening out in the Atlantic. So what does this mean for our forecast? Well, let's take a look at the latest European model guidance from the Penn State E-Wall website. Now, again, I'm using the European model guidance for two reasons. One, it's been the most consistent, and two, it has the strongest agreement among all models. So here we are for this evening. Our cold front is moving through. Not much in the way of precipitation. I think, again, that a lot of the precipitation associated with this cold front this morning over the Ohio River Valley is going to run into the Appalachians and pretty much dry out for the most part. Can't rule out an isolated rain or snow shower, most likely rain shower. But I don't think there's going to be anything significant with this cold front. By tomorrow, high pressure is in control. We're under the influence of a nice northwesterly wind. Temperatures will struggle in the 40s, lower to mid 40s over the northern interior, mid 40s, possibly even a few upper 40s along the coast, especially as you move towards the Delaware River Valley. By the time we get towards this weekend, things start to get a little bit interesting. Now, Saturday, high pressure's in control, will remain chilly, but moderating more into the mid 40s to lower 50s. But Sunday night, things get complicated. You see, what we end up with heading forward for Sunday night is this warm front here. You see this? This warm front will be running into this high pressure system, which happens to be supporting a nice little Arctic/polar air mass over portions of eastern Canada. Notice I say eastern Canada, not the northern mid-Atlantic. The northern mid-Atlantic is under the regime of a modified polar air mass. Now you have warm air running into cold air. That typically leads to what's called isotropic lifting, or what you'll likely hear on the news, overrunning. Now, there is a potential, and I stress potential, for snowfall with this warm front Sunday night into Monday morning. There's a lot of questions, though, that have to be answered. For example, if this high pressure system is just a little bit further east, then you end up with a driving easterly wind, and that leads to temperatures pushing into, let's say, about 36 to 38 degrees, and that, of course, means rain. But if the high pressure system stays perfectly in place over portions of Quebec, then you end up with a more northeasterly wind. I still think along the coast you end up with a rain-snow mix and not much in the way of accumulation, if anything. But as you move away from the coast, especially towards northwestern New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania, west of the Philadelphia metro and northwest of the New York City metropolitan area, you could end up with accumulating snow. Now, I think the best threat for this is going to be more towards south central Pennsylvania, especially because you have the strongest warm air transport in that location. But we have to watch this threat. Okay, we have to keep an eye on it. Not jump the gun yet, but something to certainly keep an eye on for Sunday night and a Monday. And then moving forward, notice our storm track starts to shift north. This starts to shift more towards the west coast. And you're going to see the influence of that shift coming up with our storm track shifting more towards New England. Our high pressure system is forced to the east. Notice how strong it gets between Sunday night and Monday night with this development, but plenty of warm air being forced in. You see some of that cold air damming in central Pennsylvania. This is a concern that we're going to keep an eye on. For Monday, next week could start off rather nasty, especially north and west of the major cities. But this storm lifts northwest, it drives warm air, and then behind that storm, cold air comes right back in. So don't be surprised if, let's say, on Tuesday morning, you have a morning high in the upper 40s to mid 50s, and then by Tuesday evening, you're back down in the 30s, thus is spring. And then moving forward throughout the rest of the forecast, notice what happens with our polar vortex. It shifts towards the west. But we still have this block in the Atlantic that we still have to deal with. So we're going to continue to deal with a rather volatile weather pattern. And this is something that I've been warning my premium members about, with the potential of a backdoor cold front being a nasty problem for this upcoming spring, especially for March and April, where you have this cold air kind of locked in over the Canadian Maritimes. You have warm air surging up from the Gulf Coast, and we are in that battle zone between, let's say, temperatures in the 40s over northeastern Connecticut, possibly even 30s. Meanwhile, the Philadelphia metro is in the mid 60s. That's going to be fun to forecast for, right? Well, that is your forecast discussion for today. Of course, I'm your meteorologist, Stephen DiMartino. You can follow the latest weather information at nynjpaweather.com and nynjpaweather on Twitter and Facebook. And of course, being a premium member is only $10 a month. Not bad, right? By the way, working on merchandising, your favorite t-shirts and stickers and all sorts of things, working on, especially mugs. The mugs look pretty cool. And that should be out in the next couple of weeks. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe out there.